Like, there's a lot of times where I just can't hold that perch because I'm against a leader, but when you're an E leader, you just kind of get it, right? So.
And I'm back. Which means you are alive again, and everything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law.
I got it.
Pom-poms. There we go.
But yeah, thank you for your support, Debbie and Gem. Oh my god, I was so happy because, oh my gosh, when you were saying like Bright Water is E-leader like territory, I was like, when do I say that? I actually do really bad at Brine Water, so I was just like really happy that I was like, yes, I'm doing above what I usually do.
It's a back.
All right. We're definitely back on Twitch. I'm just waiting to see if YouTube is alive. Devi, would you by chance be able to check and see if the YouTube stream is going?
You can't even hear her.
Also,
like,
you might want to.
But you can't hear her.
Make sure we can get the YouTube POV up before we get going, because right now YouTube always takes a bit to look back. Okay, I think it's there. I just refreshed. Cool.
I don't know what a POV is.
I see it now. Point of view.
Oh, okay. It is alive, but Restream isn't showing it to me.
Yeah, it is alive though. I just pulled
very
it up.
Cool of it. Okay, so I'm going to really quickly open up the YouTube chat so I can personally see it, because without opening it up myself, I'm not going to be able to.
Oh, that's weird. I don't have... Actually, my teammate Pichu made it. I don't know how YouTube works. I'm kind of like boomer level, which is kind of embarrassing. It makes me really sad. I don't know how you... Because I'm like, I wish I knew, like, how streams work. Like, sometimes I get lost in Twitch, but I'm really trying to learn how to use Twitch, but, like, I get lost.
It happens.
It's all good.
Sure, after a while,
everybody had trouble at first, but you'll get there for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
You got it.
All right.
While this is loading, I would like to say something really quick, if you don't mind. But when I was thinking about that comment, that was like, Theory sounds like she's being held at gunpoint, and it sounds like, you know that one meme where it's like the guy is holding his girlfriend and he's like,
oh yeah, the like TikTok that everybody responded to, where he's got like the Nerf gun.
Yeah, it's what it made me
and then there's like news reporters weighing in, and yeah, oh my goodness.
My favorite meme.
I thought you were gonna bring up the always has been meme.
Oh.
That's also very accurate to the situation.
All right.
Just
well,
$1 million.
Remove his privilege of new stream titles. Oh no, is the stream title wrong? Well, we'll have to deal with it. I'll fix it in. I'll fix it when it actually posts, and I can like actually monetize it for ad revenue. So we're good.
I'm just copy pasting it in the YouTube chat every so often.
Today is my birthday, which means I finally get to introduce you guys to my girlfriend. This is the moment. They've been waiting to introduce the girlfriend to the Squid School stream chat. This is the moment, everybody.
Today is my birthday. Just the way he says it is just so...
Today is my birthday.
Well, not to meme on you too hard, but congratulations. Okay. So we are going to get started with our VOD review here for the team called Glowfish. You can see there's Theory. See it? Okay, my head's hiding it. There's Theory right above my head. See? Right there.
Hi.
It's them.
It's nice to meet you.
And then we've got... I also just need to point out Hatsune Pichu. That is the name of this user.
People love her name.
That is all.
People love her name.
Fantastic.
Spend the entire game.
Ooh, that was loud. We're gonna turn that down by a lot. Yeah, that should be a lot better.
Discord stream reminder. You might want to give them the Discord view. Nudge, nudge.
No.
Wait, how
okay,
are
thank
you
you.
seeing the stream?
So on Discord, if you click on my name, you should get the option Watch Stream, and that's what you'll want to do.
On your name. Oh, I see it. Okay. The audio in this VOD is so bad.
It'll be okay.
I think.
As long as we can hear what people are saying, we'll live with it.
Okay. You can hear two people.
All right. It's better than 0 people. Okay. So here we go. I'll let this all play out, and then we'll be able to see. Okay. So we got Zimmy, T-Tech, Splash, and Rapid Pro. And this is Clam Blitz. And then they've got Machine, Roller, T-Tech, and Splatterscope. Interesting. Okay. Let me think about this. So we've got 1 lethal bomb, which isn't a ton, but they I mean, they technically have 2 lethal bombs, but one of them is a curling bomb, so it doesn't count. No, actually, no, they've got the Splatterscope. I'm dumb. So they've got more bombs than us. So on Clam Blitz, especially in places where people tend to cluster around the basket, I find that bombs are really helpful as a defensive tactic. So that's something to consider. But what else have we got? We've got double Toxic Mist, which also, I'm not a huge fan of that because there's just not as much stopping power that way. Like, we can slow them down, but we can't actually stop them from going anywhere. And so that'll prevent them from, that won't really prevent them from getting into some of the more annoying places. That's probably the biggest thing I would say about it. I think that the specials are fine. Like, you've obviously got a Crab Tank, which is top tier. You've got the Tri-Strike, which we're starting to find out is also top tier. The Big Bubbler, it's good for defense, and it might help in maybe setting up an offensive push while we've got the basket open. In transition, it's going to be a little bit less useful. Like, you're not going to be able to break into mid as easily if you're using a Big Bubbler, so it might be something you have to use a little bit selfishly. Because the Big Bubbler can't move is the problem, unless you, like, put it on the tower or something. So the Big Bubbler cannot be used to take more space than you already have. It can only be used to secure space. So in Clam Blitz, typically that's going to mean that you're either using it selfishly to help you win a fight, so that, like, oh, I'm about to be surrounded, but I've got a shield generator, so I'm going to win anyway. Or you're planting it around their basket to keep their basket open, or around your basket to make your basket difficult to push. So those are the kind of use cases that I'm thinking there.
Okay.
And then the Ink Vac is something that I think is more useful in Clam Blitz than most modes. Especially Clam Blitz maps that have, like, major choke points, so that you can just, like, for example, drop into Freezer or something and have your back to a corner and just be able to stop anything that's coming at you. Except for the roller. So
That's true.
That's, you've got, you know, some decent specials here for playing the map mode. I think that I'm less of a fan of the Zimmy more than anything else, because we already have 1 Toxic Mist, and the special is a little bit less useful to be pushing with here. But I do like that we've got a lot of midline pressure. We're going to be able to kind of gang up on these frontline weapons between the Mini and the Rapid and make it difficult for them to exist. We've got the Rapid Pro, which is going to be able to harass the Charger in some situations. So that's at least an answer to their longer ranged weapon there. It was more so the case in Splatoon 2 with the Rapid Pro kit that had wall and armor, because your wall could block the Charger shots to let you get into range easier, and then the armor made it so that the Charger wasn't going to one-shot any of your teammates. So it was more of an anti-Charger weapon at that time, but the main weapon still does a really good job of hitting up over ledges, and since it can hit from such long range, you can get into positions where you're attacking over the top of a ledge and making the backliner sad. This is one of Devi's least favorite things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's why we killed him like twice. Your joke is to get.
This is from Pichu's perspective, not mine.
Yeah, I figured that out eventually. I see. Okay, so the audio being bad means that the levels are below the level of game audio.
Yeah.
So I'll do my best to hear what they're saying, but it's going to be challenging just because there's something else in the mix that's competing with it.
I'll help you push up. Hold on.
Watch me dead.
I'll put a Clam.
Roller in
All right. Oh, whoops. I'm accidentally adjusting the volume instead of backing up the slider. Okay. So Pichu rolls out to the right-hand side, but it looks like the fight ends up going down on left. I would like to see if the fight is going to be on left. I would like to see Pichu... I guess they're zoning out these members on right. It's just, it feels like this whole fight goes down without Pichu really acknowledging it. And it sounds like it is being called out. This is something I've talked about a lot recently on stream, so pardon me if I sound like a broken record, but my general rule for team coordination is that you only want to take one fight at a time, and you always want to be shooting at the player who's shooting at your teammate. That's, you know, the 1-2 punch of how to team. So right now, there's a fight that happened on the left. We see, you know, players have gone down over there. We've heard the calls. That means that there's going to be a lot of attention drawn over to that area. If the enemy team were to just leave that fight alone after their player goes down, now they're just at a 3v4 numbers disadvantage, and there's nothing for them to do but back up. A lot of the time what you're going to see is if a player goes down, you're going to have to look for the enemy players in a coordinated setting, because they're going to try and dogpile that and trade back and see if they can get back to even numbers before the fight is done. So as soon as one fight starts, as soon as anybody goes down, that's something that should get your attention, so that you're either playing to zone other players away from that fight and try and start pressing forward and take your numbers advantage forward, or you're trying to become a part of that fight. And it does feel like Pichu is forcing these players, like the roller, for example, back a little bit, but they also do have a way to disengage from Pichu by going to your left, their right, and I'm worried here that they end up being able to take advantage of that. So Pichu trades in a 1v2, which is okay. It's not the best outcome, but much better than going, you know, fully down, obviously. But I don't know that this fight is called at all. I don't think I hear it over the comms or anything. And if there were other players there to trade the roller back, that could have been a 2-for-1 instead of a 1-for-1. And that's the disadvantage of having two fights happen at once. That there's nobody there to trade back at some point. Whereas if they put everybody onto one fight and you don't, then they can trade back until they get the last trade that's in their favor, and they have an advantageous position from there. So, like I was saying, one fight at a time. As soon as one fight is called, everything that happens on the team is in service of that one fight. Everybody is going to rotate to where they can either have an impact on that fight, or they can zone everybody else away from that fight so that the enemy team isn't going to interfere and be able to trade back. And that's really the point of callouts. That's what you want your frontliners to be working on together. That's what everybody should be trying to get on the same page about. As soon as you hear one fight being called, it is your job to not start other fights, but to instead either disengage from the other fights that you're currently in, or go and have an impact on the fight that's currently happening elsewhere.
Okay, I think I understand.
So there's one left and one right. They both go down in separate fights, and now... Wow, that almost rhymed. And so now we're actually a player down. Something that's... Ooh, that was weird. I think I hit the volume slider and I was hearing myself. Something that is important for... Oh, okay. I thought that Devi was saying, "Hi, I'm new to the stream. I'm Devi." But no, it's, "Hi, I'm new to the stream. I'm Devi." I get it. So, another thing that's really important right now is to recognize that we're at a numbers disadvantage. We are in a 2v3 situation with with one player respawning on each side. What that means is that the players on our team who are going in right now, they're in some trouble because they're very likely to end up in a disadvantageous fight here. And they do, in fact, go down. The only other player who was alive at the time wasn't up to help them. And this is something that can cause what I call the feed stagger loop. Have you seen my videos? Do you know like what the feed stagger loop is?
I think I have seen that video.
Ooh, something happened to the mic there.
Oh, hello?
Hello, you there? Okay.
Yes, I have seen that
Whoa,
video.
there's a lot
Oh.
of noise going on. I don't know if someone's bumping their
Really?
mic or what, but could we
that
please
me?
stop with that? That's very loud. Let me check.
I didn't move or anything. I'm just sitting still.
Like it's maybe someone else in the call too. Maybe it was wind. I don't know.
No, it's
No,
okay. They're
I was
muted.
muted.
Oh, okay.
That must have been me then. I don't know. Is it there?
Not anymore. It was just.
Okay.
It sounded like something like was scraping past the mic or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
Oh,
there
that
for a
sounds
second.
really
but
bad. Sorry.
It was there for a second, but it suddenly just stopped. I don't know what happened.
All right.
Mhm.
Sorry about that, but
your mic's fine now.
yeah,
worries.
it's
Okay.
working.
Sounds good. Sorry, I have seen that video of the feed stagger loop, but I don't mind if you explained it
Sure.
more.
So the way that you have to play when you're behind is to play to protect your life. If you can get a pick that's like super free and you know that you can totally get it and not be contested by anybody else, they're not going to trade back. Okay, that's probably worth it. But in every other scenario, you need to just not go for it because a trade in this situation goes in favor of the enemy team. As a general rule, a trade goes in favor of the status quo. Whoever's at an advantage right now, if there's a trade, they're going to stay at an advantage for longer. And so right now, being in a 2v3, being in a 3v4, whatever you wanted to call it, if you trade 1-for-1, now you're in a 2v3, and you're going to stay in a 2v3 for longer than you would have stayed in the 3v4 before you were able to regroup and get everybody back in. So that's one problem with it. Another problem with it is that when you go in, you're less likely to win your fight, and they're more likely to be able to trade back. So that's why I say you have to be extra sure. Because it's very possible that if you go in for a fight, you immediately get traded back. And so you're betting a lot on your ability to get that pick and also get out quickly. But if, let's say that, we're at a 3v4 situation and we decide to take a fight. Well, let's even say that we just, it's only like a 1-for-2 trade because we're at a disadvantageous fight, but we don't get fully wiped. So now that puts us into a 1v2 situation. Did I do that right? No, a 1v3 situation. This is still not a fight that we win. If the player who's left up, the one player, goes in for a fight and goes down, when their teammates come back up, they're still going to be in a 3v4 because their one teammate went down the most recently. And so this keeps your team at a numbers disadvantage over and over again if you just keep going in on disadvantageous fights. So the fight that happens up here on the upper right was one that we really wanted to avoid. I think this player actually moved forward into like a lot of enemy ink and everything. Just not a very safe position to try and take. So we should be recognizing right now that we are still staggered, that this player is only now respawning, that this player is going to be down for the next 10 seconds or so, and that the whole enemy team is already up and ready to go, and that we really don't want to be fighting. This is definitely too deep in to be at this point. We've also fired a lot of shots, which we need to recognize is going to cause the enemy team to notice us. Whenever you fire shots, that's one of the most visually obvious things that you can be doing. You are going to lose stealth as soon as you start firing shots. More so if you're firing shots at other players, but if you're trying to be stealthy, if you're trying to keep yourself safe, it's really important to minimize the amount of time that you're spending painting as much as you possibly can. You'll see when I go for a flank that, and I'm going to show you on the screen right here, which I realize you're not actually seeing, so I need to switch which window I'm sharing with you. Be right there. Put this here, do this, and then it should show up here. Nope, not that. Should show up here. Okay. So, when I am going for like a flank play, something that you'll notice is that I will stick really close to a ledge so that I'm not as visible to someone who might be above me. Because this is a really difficult angle to see. And if I'm down here, you can't actually see that from that angle. And I'll fire as few shots as I possibly can, so that even if someone's checking on the map, they're less likely to see a line of ink coming toward them. And they're also just less likely to see the paint going down. So I'm just moving as quickly as I can, but also with as little bit of an ink trail as possible. And if I'm approaching a corner, a blind corner that I'm about to try and sneak around, I make sure that I don't paint around the corner. I make sure that if someone's over here, they're not going to see ink coming around like this. Because look at how obvious that is if someone were to go for that. Then I'm just going to be like, oh, someone's about to come over here in 2, 1, and there they are. And I'm going to shoot at them. So there are a lot of little stealth strats that we want to employ when we're trying to be sneaky. And it doesn't look like Pichu is really trying to be that sneaky, but it's the only way that Pichu in this case is going to be able to keep themselves safe with the enemy team pushing in the way that they are in this situation. I'm going to switch back to the other screen now for you guys on Discord so that you're going to be able to hear it. So here... This also, it's kind of a little bit of a... there's a video that I put out very recently called the I'm Not Sure Shuffle. Or about the I'm Not Sure Shuffle, I should say. It's a movement pattern that you tend to see, especially with like low-level competitive play, where especially like a short-range shooter, a frontliner, will fire like 2 shots and then swim somewhere, and then fire 2 shots and then swim somewhere, and then fire 2 shots and then swim somewhere. And they're not painting an awful lot. They're exposing their position because they're firing so many shots. And the most important thing is that they're not collecting information about what's happening. And so they're being indecisive. They're not sure, should I commit to a fight right now? Should I be painting right now? And so they're trying to do it all at once. But in doing so, they're denying themselves the information about what they need to do next. So here, what's happening is the enemy team is starting to push up and take control of mid. And I think Pichu isn't really recognizing that fact because they're busy trying to like, okay, I need to watch my corners. I need to paint this. I need to paint this. Oh, there's someone over there. I'm going to run over here and throw a bomb at them. By the time they're throwing this bomb, they're kind of surrounded. There's, I think, someone coming from the right stack. Yeah. And they've run themselves out of ink by running around and firing all these shots and throwing this bomb and stuff. And they haven't, in the meantime, been giving themselves an escape route. Their escape route is to either run back to the right or to run back through freezer. But the freezer route is completely cut off by people who are on left stacks at this point. And the right side route is now cut off by people who are on the right stacks. And if they were stopping to collect information instead of just blip, move over here, blip, move over here, put another blip of paint down, they're... if they were to collect information instead of doing that, they would be able to avoid that situation. But since they haven't been doing that, it just runs towards them, they get collapsed on, and now we're staggered again. Because all of their teammates are now up, but now they're down, and that's going to cost another, say, 12 or 13 seconds of downtime before the team actually has an advantageous fight to take.
Our staff.
Yeah, that's fine.
Our staff.
Okay. It looks like we try to defend here at the baskets. So again, like, this is a stagger situation. We need to recognize a lot earlier than we have that players are down and we should not be engaging. The most we want to do from here is take a high ground defensive position and throw things at the people who are trying to score at the basket. But they're probably going to get in at some point. And to an extent, we might even need to let them with the amount of advantage they've been able to get at this point.
I didn't get to do that.
Let's see. So I'm trying to, okay, so I think theory's up here and then drops down. Okay, I like that. I think this is a little bit too far forward. I think right now where we want someone is to be on the other side of bunker here, on the other side of toilet paper, as some people will call it. Because this, I think, is a bunch of stacks of toilet paper rolls. Um, they if they come around from here, one of the let me pull up this map actually on sendu.inc/plans. Will give us an easier way to talk about it. This is from an earlier VOD review. Mako Mart, and this is Clam Blitz. Oh, is there an overhead now? There's an overhead now. Wait, I had no idea. Thank you, Sendu. Everybody say thank you, Sendu, in chat. Sendu is the creator of Sendu.inc, in case that had eluded you. Okay, so the general game plan in Clam Blitz is when the basket is open, you are now playing splat zones. The splat zone is the radius around the basket where it's possible to throw in clams from. So if you, as the defending team, can keep this painted and then keep the enemy team out of the zone where they can paint it, then you're going to win. If the enemy team can keep this painted and can keep you from being able to paint it back, then they're going to win. So our first goal is, of course, to secure the basket. We have to make sure that this whole area is safe before we can do anything else. And so for that, we're going to take positions like this, maybe like this if there's no like long-range weapon watching from here or something. And we're going to make sure that there's nobody who is immediately in position to score. There are two main ways people are going to try and score on this map. One is straight from here. Actually, no, that's a lie. There are a bunch of ways. This is a basket that you can kind of run around in circles, so you got to be kind of careful about it. But the most obvious way is to come from here. You can jump off of here and throw a power clam in midair and make it in. So roughly like this range is what you have to worry about for power clams, and roughly like this range for smaller clams. Then besides that, what most strong teams will try to do is put someone over on the right-hand side, either here or maybe here. The second option is a lot more aggressive and a lot more confidence because there's not a lot of cover as they come around here, whereas if they go this way, they can shark right here and wait to see if anybody in this direction is looking at them. And if they are spotted out, then they can just back up and have cover. So coming around here means I fully intend to spawn camp you. And so that's usually easier to shut down because you have high ground over it and there's not a lot of cover except for this thing right here. So usually that's not as much of a concern unless it's like a roller who's getting underneath this wall, in which case now it's really annoying. So usually what you're worried about is this spot here. You're worried about this spot here, and they can also come up this box and jump across and get clams in from this angle. So that's another thing that you have to worry about. So as a team, you want people in positions where they can cover all of those ideas. I really like having theory right here because a rapid blaster is going to be able to hit around behind this and keep anybody off the right-hand side. And once the right-hand side is clear, they're going to be able to target some people in the middle here as well from this kind of angle. So this gives you a lot of options, and it puts your weapon in positions where it's particularly strong, and you're not going to get run into by frontliners right away who are going to try and rush you down. The frontliners are more likely to come in either annoying spots like right here and maybe try to hit up over the top like a roller or a tri-slosher or something like that would do that. Or they're going to zip over to here and try to make this kind of a play on the basket. And so this is where you want somebody who's going to be good against a frontline weapon to stand. Either another frontline weapon or maybe something with a little bit of range so they can stand right here and put suppressive fire down on this spot while they're also able to control this if there's nobody threatening this area. So those are some kinds of defensive ideas for what to do in this position. Once we do have control of all of those scoring areas, so basically we have this under control, the next concern is that somebody paints their way into this area again and tries to run another score in. You'll often see, especially on Mako Mart, if you leave even the tiniest little streak of enemy paint right here, you'll just see someone swim straight through that stealthily and they're scoring before you realize what has happened, and they get a lot more points in that way. So the next priority after all of this is secure is to get this range under control right here. And by under control, I mean you have painted the crap out of it so that there is no way, no little splotch, that an enemy can get into that position and swim towards the basket with clams without you having plentiful warning that they are coming. You want this to be painted very, very thickly and leave no little streaks untouched. So that you are able to regain control of that area. And then you start, doing this sort of thing and taking bit by bit back with what resources you have remaining to get to the enemy basket. And at that point, you try to set up control around their basket. Same kind of idea, it's splat zones. So that's the general theory behind this. So let's see how we play this defense here. It looks like we've got someone on the far left over here. This isn't necessarily a bad position, especially if there's like someone that they're engaging over here. There's someone that they're like keeping away from this angle of approach. One concern with this, though, is that it only gives you sight of this angle. So if you're all the way over here and someone's scoring here, you have to like rotate around, and that takes some time. And they're going to get at least 2 or 3 clams in that time while that's happening. And that's if you move quickly. So it might be better to make your kind of home base like here or here. This way you can back up onto this platform if you need to and take the high ground. This way you're at least able to back up and you have this box in between you and them. And you have clear line of sight on this angle as well. So you can, cover more of your positions. Because if you get too committed to a fight over here like this, you're here fighting this guy, well, you're not stopping anyone from going over the top. You're not stopping anyone from coming in from mid. You were never going to stop anyone from coming over here. It's just a lot more limited in terms of what you're controlling. You want to look more in terms of how can I make the radius that I control as uninterrupted as possible. So from here, you've got a better radius around you than you do from here, where it's just going to look like this and like this. So that might be a little bit too far out for them to be right now, but it depends. If they go and get the pick and they're able to get back here cleanly, then I have full faith in it working. All right, we're doing a really good job of making sure we have this paint control in Freezer. We've got the right side covered, we've got the left side covered, we've got the Freezer covered, so this is a solid defense here. They have clams, but they have no way in, and so they get stopped at this point. Well, they were going to get stopped. What happens here? So this player goes down, and we really can't tell exactly how that happened. But as Pichu was trying to rotate over to help, they got spotted out as well. I do think that Pichu here would have had a little bit more success in this engagement if they had been doing more work to maintain stealth. Because they throw a bomb, they fire all these shots, they jump and fire these shots. They're very visible right now. And that makes it so that if the enemy player decides that they have a good fight, they're not going to be prevented from taking that fight. They're going to know exactly where that fight is for them.
They're holding it.
All right. So we do have a mini trying to play defense here. It does end up working out for now. We've got to watch out for this Booyah Bomb. This Booyah Bomb could definitely break open our defense if we're not careful. We want to make sure that we have escape routes in 2 different directions, and that as soon as it gets thrown, we're spotting where it goes so we know where to move. That is a really unfortunate pick, but you are going to be able to clean that up and take out the clam carrier. So that's really good. Once we take that player out, yeah, I can see that being a good idea to cut off this option, make sure no one's going to flank you. I think, though, what you're more concerned with at this point is someone coming from mid, because this clam is going to despawn if they don't grab it. And so I would paint this area first, because this is where I feel like I'm more likely to see players coming from. And once that's all clear, maybe then I would turn to the right and try and deal with that, so that I've got, you know, the most obvious place, the most likely threat covered first. This seems like a little bit of a panic special. There's not a lot of good angles for you to throw this from. We don't see a lot of targets, so we might be able to like flood out freezer and make that area difficult for the enemy to be in, and it does end up working out. So okay, I guess that was a good plan after all. But we couldn't really see what was going on there, so unless we had callouts that there were people specifically in freezer, this is a little bit of a lucky guess, I would say.
Let's go down.
Yeah, there's no one else there.
I just protected.
That said, also, if you are like Krim in the video that I put out today, and you know your angles with the tri-strike well enough that you know where those are going to land, and you're putting them there very intentionally, then more power to you. Go for it.
That's why I'm backing up. I just protected.
I do have a quick question real quick, if you
That's why I'm
don't
backing
mind.
up.
All right, good job collapsing on that player. Good job recognizing where the fight is and getting everyone on top of it. This is how it works when an enemy player pushes in at numbers disadvantage. They may get someone, but as soon as it happens, they instantly get traded back by the other 3 players, and these 3 players now regroup and they have control of more of mid. So that was well played. Ooh, I'm not sure why we're turning around here. Are we getting flanked? Okay. Yeah, okay, it looks like we were getting flanked. Because it's as soon as we all turn around that this player goes down. It might be wise for the player who went down here, I think it's the Splash, to actually try and hold their position a little bit and play a little bit to skirmish. When your team is getting flanked, but you know that there are more players behind you than there are flankers, it's good to pay attention to that and make sure that you're safe from it, and also make sure that you're maybe throwing a burst bomb back there or trying to support them however you can. But also, if everybody on the team turns their backs right now to try and deal with this flanker, they're going to get shot in the back like they do here. So there are definitely times where I will hear that we are being flanked, and I will instead look forward as a frontline weapon so that I'm making sure that we're not getting rushed by the main body of the enemy team while everybody else is collapsing on this flank. Sometimes I think that's actually the wiser choice, because if we just turn tail and run, we end up putting ourselves in a position where we have no cover, and this ends up just getting us sniped. So definitely don't forget about the rest of the enemy team when there's a flank. Deal with what is the most immediate threat to you at that time. Make sure you're safe from that first, and only then do you go back and help someone else. I feel like I'm an airline attendant saying, secure your mask before securing someone else's. It's for the same reason. That reason being, if you've passed out, you can't help anybody else. And if they're unable to help themselves, well, now you're both stuck.
If I may, I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too sure of like the call out, but like the elevated platforms that are diagonally from the block in the middle. I'm a bit conflicted. Are those like good spots to be in to check for like anyone coming in for an attack, or
This
are
stuff?
those dangerous? Because I feel like they're a mixed bag.
Are you seeing on the projection here what I'm...
I'm talking about these.
These areas are called stacks. So this is left stack and this is right stack, because if we're this team looking this way, then this one's to our left and this one's to our right.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about the stacks in some detail here. So the advantage of the stacks is that they are the highest ground on the entire map, except for maybe some spots in spawn. And they're right there in mid. So this is a really powerful position, but it's also a very exposed position. So this is a position, by powerful I mean that you have access to a lot of the map. And high ground always means that you're able to see over cover better. So it's harder to hide from players who are on top of the stacks because they can just see over the top and know what's going on wherever. So it's a powerful position, but if somebody were to start shooting at you from long range, you have very little cover to work with up there. So while the stacks are important to control, they're also not something that you can just like stand right here on and expect never to get shot at. There are plenty of ways to approach this kind of a position. You can take cover here and then drop down and take cover behind this and then take cover behind this, or you can climb up the wall from literally any side. You could go all the way around and come back this way. You can come in from this direction. Like, there are lots of different ways to flank someone who's standing on the stacks. So usually when people play the stacks, they want to play it with a weapon that has damage that can go up and over ledges. So rollers are really good on this map. You especially see a lot of carbon rollers because they're just really good at hitting up over the top of one of the most important map features on this map, as well as being able to hit up over this kind of a wall, over this kind of a wall, over this wall, over here. Like, there are a lot of walls that a carbon or something like it could hit up over the top of that make that weapon especially dangerous here. So a lot of the time you'll see something like a sloshing machine standing here because it can attack this spot down here. And also, because of the way that the stacks slope, because of the way they tilt downward, is right about here, they start slanting, so that rather than just being flat, it starts to do this if you're looking at it from the side. So this is what the stacks look like from mid, looking this way. So we'll do it 3D here for those who are having trouble visualizing. So this line right here is this line right here. And so if a sloshing machine is standing right here and another player is standing here and they try to attack the sloshing machine, they're going to hit the floor instead of being able to hit the sloshing machine a lot of the time. They need to take very, very precise shots to be able to skim just over the edge of that and actually hit their target. So this is a safer defensive position, and for a weapon that can just do this and like even hit over the top of stuff, that's a really powerful position. And so I really like putting like a slosher in particular on the left-hand side to be able to defend that. So another thing that's important about this in Clam Blitz specifically is that this spot right here, you can jump across and get a power clam out from. So it is always important to at least have control of this area of the stack, because if you don't clear this out, then that's giving them one of the safer routes, the faster routes to get a power clam in, where you're only going to be vulnerable while you're in the air up there. So, does that answer your question, or do you have a more specific situation you're thinking of?
Yeah, now that you've brought up the reasons why it's a powerful spot yet a bad spot, I kind of made the association with like it's the same reason why the verticality of Flounder is such a good aspect of the map, because every spot on the map is going to be high risk, high reward technically, because you can get flanked from every side.
Mm-hmm. But it's also something that lets you see a lot when you're on that high
Yeah.
ground. So there's definitely a lot of interesting tactics that occur there. All right. So moving back in, we've stopped the push at 80, which is totally fine. We have plenty of time left in the game to make this up. They scored no follow-up whatsoever. I will take being scored on with just a single power clam and getting a bunch of picks on the enemy team over a 100 to 100 situation a lot of the time. Like, I think that that is a stronger place for you guys to be. Now, we didn't end up getting a lot of picks. We kind of just forced them out. We zoned them out. So it's not the best, but we do have a pity clam, which is really powerful. Pity clams are better than power clams because they don't have to be revealing your position at all times, and they're not going to die if they just get left out there on the ground. So you've got a lot of scoring potential now, and if we can find a way in, then this is going to be a stronger scoring push than the one they put together in all likelihood. The question is, how are we going to get in? Right now, we've got a big bubbler and we've got an ink vac. The ink vac might be able to help us clear a path forward, but We probably need at least one other aggressive special to be able to pair with that, and we don't have a crab or a tri-strike. The reason I say we need one of those things is that otherwise we need to rely on being able to win fights. You never want to have to count on winning a fight. When you get the opportunity to win a fight, obviously you always want to go for it. But against a team of 4 enemy players, it's just kind of a coin flip if you're going to go for a fight, unless you have some kind of tactical advantage you can create. So if they don't give you that tactical advantage, which on paper you don't really have a way to force them to do, then it's going to be a stalemate. But a special, like a well-timed tri-strike, can help you even that out. If the tri-strike goes out and forces some of those players in that good defensive enemy position to move to a place they don't want to be, now you have an advantageous fight. Now you've created a tactical advantage. So we're probably waiting on one of those 2 specials to come out, or for someone to be able to get a random pick somewhere. There's already a very aggressive play happening on the far right side, and this is something I really want getting called out. Like, for someone to be this far forward, everybody on the call needs to know that that's happening and already be following up by pressuring the right stack to keep this player safe, because otherwise this is a solo play that is likely to end them up in a 1v2 on enemy ink. So we do end up actually being able to go in and get one, but there's a player who's in behind us that takes out several on the way out. It kind of feels like we're chasing after this player rather than being a part of the fight with it. Like, if this gets called out and everyone moves up with it, this is a great coordinated play, and we start to overwhelm these players, and we're able to trade back, and we're able to kind of get the information we need in the direction that we're trying to push, to know, for example, that the roller is still there and is pushing around behind us. But since we've only just arrived and we didn't know what was going on yet, and we're trying to really make it... we're trying to very quickly adjust to what's happening, there's some information we're not going to be able to collect in time, and we end up getting flanked. Whenever this right-hand side of the map is getting painted, we've got to make sure that we counterpaint that to make sure there's not a roller sharking. The left-hand alley as well is very important. These are very, very scary roller spots if we let them happen. If we paint and make sure we're not letting it happen, we can always counterplay the roller. The way that you beat the roller is by painting. If you paint defensively enough to where they cannot push into melee range of you without first having to paint for themselves, you will always be able to survive a roller ambush.
Hang on, no, you're 2 down, you're 2 down.
Yeah, so now that we're 2 down, this position right here is very risky. You probably want to be backing up to a more conservative sharking position than being right at the basket. Even if someone goes and tries to, like, super jump the power clam in, best case scenario, you score 1 power clam, they get a pity clam, you get a penalty, and nothing else goes in, and now you're at a numbers disadvantage. So it looks like there's a crab in their base, and maybe these callouts have been made, and it's just the audio that's causing me to not be able to hear them, but we want to be following up on this crab now that it's popped. We don't want this crab to go off by itself. Any special that ever gets used, you always want to follow up with that and create more pressure. A special by itself against an entire enemy team is always going to lose, but a special combined with pressure in a different direction against the enemy team that's having to deal with that special, that's almost certainly going to get you picks. So we want to make sure we're getting up there as fast as possible with this crab once it's popped. I think this play is a little bit on the over-aggressive side from the front line, given the positioning of the rest of the team. I think this isolates them too much, and that they're going to be able to get caught out. But if they can stay... Oh yeah, they just immediately go down here. So yes, we're able to pick up one on the other side of the map, but this is basically a case of taking 2 different fights at once. The fight is still in mid, but we're trying to make the fight be in the forward right. And so what's going to happen is the enemy team is just going to collapse on the crab and ignore whatever's happening in mid, and then they're going to have a numbers advantage as they push into mid. At least that's what should have happened. The T-Tech out here was being a little bit overzealous trying to take that fight, considering they had a crab in their base already. They should probably have just been trying to like kite and disengage and get away from you to buy their team time to finish off the crab and then be able to rush with numbers advantage afterwards. That was a mistake on their part too. Good picks though. So from this position, we get one. Now that was a little bit of the I'm not sure shuffle right there too. I'm going to shoot here and then I'm going to move. And then I'm going to shoot here and then I'm going to move. Either shoot here and pre-fire because you're worried someone's going to come up, or just see that there's nobody there and move on rather than revealing your position a couple more times. I'm about to sneeze. But from here, not a big fan of this bomb because that's very unlikely to get someone. I don't think we've seen anybody over there yet. Like, we have no reason to believe that there's anyone over there. Actually, wait, no, it looks like there may be someone behind the stacks here. So is that what that bomb was for? Yeah, we see someone right there. Okay. Where does this bomb... Okay, it does explode there. Okay, actually, this is... Never mind, I take it all back. That was a really smart bomb. You're keeping them from being able to flee to this direction, which means that as you cross mid, you're going to be able to get on the other side of the box from them, and you're going to be in range as soon as you get to wherever you want to get. And then you just hard commit to one direction, and they don't react in time, which is a really good way to play it. Trying to, like, play Ring Around the Rosie for too long often leads to them either getting a read on you or just having help come in and flank you. So just going around from one side and being like, I'm here now, bye. That's probably one of the safer ways to do it. Now, the fact that the roller doesn't go after you here is a big mistake on their part. I think that you're so far forward and so exposed that you're the one they should be trying to go for rather than your teammate over here. But you're able to get two, and so that's a 3-down situation. Now we see there's the last player on the right, and I like that we're immediately moving over to deal with it. As soon as there's like this situation where you've got a bunch of the enemy team down and you're in a numbers advantage, it can be really valuable to hunt down that last player. Number one, because they could stop the push if they're sharking somewhere. But number two, if you get them, now the enemy team is staggered for longer. Even this player right here is being a little overzealous here and trying to stop the push. You've got a big bubbler out in front of them, and you're all looking at this. You should be able to just collapse on this, get this player, and now they're staggered even worse. So I generally like the play here. We're doing a good job of protecting everyone we need to while also moving up as quickly as we can and taking advantage of the stagger. I will say, so seeing where the Booyah Bomb lands, I think we can move further outside of its radius, especially since the sloshing machine isn't looking at us. And we can also try to make sure that we've got our aim on more before we start firing shots. It's very common for, like, frontline weapons to engage on someone who's not looking at them without getting their aim set first. So it's basically firing warning shots. You're putting shots out there that are going to miss, but are going to alert that player that they're being shot at more immediately than they thought they were, and that takes away your initiative. The very first shot that you fire on an opponent, especially one who's unaware, is a shot that you want to be hitting. If they're firing at you first, then it's a lot more understandable to miss shots because you're having to deal with, dodging those shots and making yourself safe first. But here, they're looking in the wrong direction from you, so there's no reason not to just get the shots the first time and make sure that they all land and that we're, like, tracking where they're going.
I can't jump in.
Yeah, so definitely agree, don't jump in there. We got the lead, I guess, but there wasn't a lot of follow-up there. So what happens here? So ultimately, we lose 2 players to the Booyah Bomb here, which I think is not really... That's not necessary. I don't think you were forced into that or anything. I think we got a little bit too excited about trying to push the basket. Always play to preserve your life first and score second. better to have like 10 clams that you didn't throw in and survive and be able to keep mid control than to just get wiped on a push and score none of those clams for that reason. So in this situation, like, we don't need to be inside the Booyah Bomb's radius. There's nobody like flanking us from behind, forcing us into it. There's no pressure from anywhere except from the Booyah Bomb. So just see where it's being thrown. Make sure you have 2 escape routes. Pick one of them and get out of this, and then go back in to keep trying to score. Once this Booyah Bomb evaporates, you've still got 2/3 of the timer left. Like, it's not like this is your last chance to get any clams in the basket or anything. But now that we've both gone down to the Booyah Bomb, the push is completely done.
I can't jump in.
Okay.
That's fine.
What? Like that.
Where are they trying to go?
All right, so it looks like we're moving up all across the left stack. I like putting a midline weapon up there. I like that we have called left stack and that we're all kind of focusing on it. And I like that we've still got one person watching the right-hand side to make sure nobody tries to flank it from mid or something.
Let's do it right now.
Follows me. Follows right.
There's a fight. From here,
Follows me.
hearing pros weak, seeing that they're standing here, we need to figure out, like, are they enclosed? Are they behind us? I feel like my first instinct is that they're a little bit in front of us, because if we've got someone right here and they're not, like, rapidly backing up, that probably means that they're shooting at something in this area, especially given that I think the clam holder, the clam holder is the mini. So if they feel safe and they're not feeling like they have to back up from here, that means that the player's a little bit further in front. You can probably actually get into a position where you drop over from the left-hand side and surprise them from over the top. Because from here, our positioning has now suddenly become a little bit redundant, because there's already a player in this position who's covering exactly the same angle we are, and there's a 2 out of 3 chance that that player has more range than we do. So being here as the frontliner isn't actually adding to the zone of control that we have on the map. We've already got, teammate right here who's controlling out to about this area. Being here and adding this much extra range to that literally does not fill in our zone any more than it was already filled in. Whereas if we're right here, we now have control over this area as well, and now our team's zone is significantly increased on the map by us being in that position. So I think we either want to take a more aggressive stance, or at least get some full paint over the top here. If you don't feel safe going over the top, at least paint it. And that way you can see if an opponent is down here and they start painting over the top, then you know, okay, yeah, that wasn't safe because there was someone watching it. But we are here. We let enemy paint continue to be right here. And we have a teammate here, and all we do is kind of drop behind them and then rotate back out. We're not really doing anything with that extra time that we have. Obviously, a lot of this positioning stuff is specifically for Pichu, because we're seeing Pichu's perspective. And that's just kind of how the way that the VODs go. But I'm hoping that a lot of these, will carry over, for example, to your splash main. And that you can kind of adapt the principles to how a mid-range weapon will work and be able to use them for yourselves too. If you do see that there is a tri-strike coming out, it's not worth throwing a bomb at, because the bomb will just get eaten by it. And bombs are very ink hungry, which is the reason I say not to throw it. You're going to lose a lot of your ink tank doing that, so you want to avoid it when it's not going to do anything for you.
I can back here.
Okay. This push is going to work specifically because of the ink vac. If it's not for this ink vac, this is very, very unsafe. You never want to be in a position in Clam Blitz where you've got the entire enemy base painted their color here, and you have just this one little path. Okay, that doesn't work. And you just have this one little path that gets you to the basket and nowhere else. That gives the opponents a very clear visual indicator. Okay, we're shooting right here. everybody on the enemy team is going to shoot that one spot, and then once that spot is shot and filled in, they're going to fill in the next spot back and push their way back here and clear all of that. Now, the reason that this is going to work is that the ink vac is here to make it so that the enemy team doesn't actually control this zone, because, yeah, they can shoot at it, but they can't actually hit it. And so this will give you a little bit of time, not that much time, especially against a team that knows how to play against it, but it will give you a little bit of time to put some paint around this area and give you guys more escape routes, so that after you're done doing what you're going to do here, you can actually back your way out of it. And it looks like you are able to take advantage of this, and you get one, and we're able to score a little bit more. Let me take a look at what the full team does here. It's hard to tell exactly what happens here, you guys. I think it forced out by the left-hand side. I think someone comes down from the left block here and starts to flank, and you have to retreat because of that. So I would say it's important on a push to make sure that you have the left side somewhat covered, that you're at least threatening to go over there, so you're forcing the enemy team to split their defense a little bit. If someone gives you the left-hand side, then you want to be actually going up over the top and scoring from there. But even if they don't, just make sure that they can't drop down on you in freezer, because freezer's a very vulnerable position, and you want to protect your teammates as they're scoring. But you do a good job after that push of keeping yourselves alive and being there in mid still. And it's because of that that you're able to get this pick. And now you're going to be able to potentially keep pushing. You got to be really careful how you approach this roller. You need to paint very, very defensively. The goal is not to rush at them as quickly as possible, because that's how they catch you and get a one-shot off. You've got to take away all of their options so that it's very obvious what they're about to do next, and you can then take advantage of their slow fire rate. It feels like there's only... Oh, okay, we're 2 down is the problem. That's what happens there. So roller gets 1, and then... Okay, got sniped, got it, yeah. So at this point, this is a really dangerous position. As soon as that goes up, it's 2v3. This is going to be hard to stop, and in order to try and defend against this, you're having to put your back to the enemy team. So... Definitely not ideal. Might have been a situation even to jump out of, believe it or not. Because I don't really see how you're supposed to defend against that at that point. The way that this needs to work here is that the roller doesn't make it around the flank in the first place to get anybody. If you're on the furthest left for your team here, and you're playing against a team that has a roller, you've got to constantly be like checking your map or painting to make sure that this route is unavailable to the enemy team. Rollers are going to do this. This is just a rule of Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3. If they've got a roller on Mako Mart, they're going to try and do this at least once. So it's important to make sure that if you're standing right here and all of your other teammates are like in front of you or something, that there's some kind of paint or some kind of early warning sign here, because otherwise you're just going to get whacked. Alright, so good job on your splash player for clearing out the left-hand side. That was that left flank that I had talked about before, where they like to get around to the left side of the basket. That's completely clear, so it looks like that is your Splash's idea on defense. They've done this a couple times now, and they seem to be doing a perfectly good job of clearing the left. And now we've got somebody who's down in the middle here. It looks like the mini. They probably wanted to keep the high ground from here. If you keep the high ground, you can paint far enough forward that they're not going to be able to score. But that way you're not exposing yourself, because if you drop down, you have no cover whatsoever. You can back around this wall if you stay up here, but if you drop down, now your back is to a wall and there's nothing in between you and the enemy team. So it's you and the shots that you fire, and if that's not enough, then you're going to go down for that. So definitely don't recommend dropping here. There's that left-hand side that I was talking about, jumping across from the stacks. As soon as Garrett has the left toilet paper clear, they want to be moving up onto left stacks and making sure this is clear too. And if it's not, then that's something they need to be calling out so that we see that coming before somebody's going to try and score here. I would also say that this right-hand side being painted right here... Let's see. What I would probably do as the frontliner here is, instead of just painting this right away before we see anyone, is swim to about the edge here, see where the players are, and then paint a full efficient rectangle from here so that we don't leave a little patch like this as we try to paint it. This is a little overzealous. If you're going to try and aggress the stack here, what you really need to be doing is sitting on the wall for a second and looking over the top to see what might be up there. From this position, and I'll draw it in plans here. From this position, you as a T-Tech can maybe hit like here with your shots. Any further than that, and you're starting to get out of range, and a long-range weapon like a sloshing machine is going to have no problem whatsoever hitting you. Even if you can hit the sloshing machine, it's going to be a harder shot because you're going to need to get it up over the ledge like this, which I didn't even do when I was drawing it. More like this. So you have less of an angle that you can hit the other player at. Because your shots don't really arc like that. They're more straight line. So they're going to have to do something like this, and you're only going to be able to hit like the top half of this player. Whereas they can hit all of you, and they can hit it from further range. So if this is the sloshing machine you're fighting against, you just can't push that. You need to like bomb it out first. If you are here and you put a bomb here, now their choice is either move forward towards you, where you can shoot them, or back up, which is probably what they'll choose to do. And then the way that you lock them out from this defensive position is by painting up this area here so they can't get back up. It looks like it's actually just the T-Tech that gets you, but with high ground advantage, they still have range over you, just less of a range advantage in that case. There's someone scoring on the left-hand side. We do kind of... So Garrett goes through on the left here, and Garrett is still up at this time. But people are still making it through. This is something where you probably want to be calling that out so the teammates can be rotating to it faster. But the important part here, and this is where I think Garrett's positioning on the left-hand side was a little bit weak earlier. It feels like Garrett is in a position where he's committed to... I don't actually know Garrett's pronouns at all, so I should say they. I was just assuming it was a variation on Garrett, but they're committing to a position that's far enough forward that if the enemy team runs into his zone, or their zone, they can't actually like push in and get anything done that way. So the priority on defense while the basket is open is not to like take further and further forward positions, because being here while we haven't secured the rest of the map might mean that someone gets around this way. So instead, we just want a position that locks them out of here. As long as we're locking them out of here, we can just sit here and wait for the basket to close, because the further forward we get, the more we cut ourselves off from being able to defend that zone, and the more of a likelihood someone slips by us. I think that Pichu is probably shooting a little bit too soon here. Again, we want to get information on where the opponent is before we fire shots at them. Otherwise, we're very likely to lose our initiative against them. Oof, with the roller in the base, that's probably it. They only need one, yeah.
That's crazy.
It gets
So,
from every direction.
what happens is we fall apart on the left-hand side, and because that defensive perimeter isn't held, they're able to get a lot of pressure that forces us to defend way back here. And with all of the people defending way back here, because we need multiple people to worry about this, the front door is wide open and everyone's scoring from the other directions now. So that was well played by them. Once they recognized that they had that flank opportunity, they made you guys pay for it in a pretty big way. And that was really the I think, defining play that won them the match here. So that was a lot. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you so much, Jim. Sorry, I was just taking notes because I thought it was so cool. But like, I think our biggest thing is defense, and we just don't know how to. I think you answered it though. When we get locked out, it's really hard for us to push back in. So like, other than painting, because sometimes we do get out painted, and then that makes them want to go for picks, because like, our idea is like, oh, if there's less players on the map, then they can't paint, and then we get aggressive and then we die. So we don't know how to win win fights when we're locked out. But also, before you answer the question, I do have to go soon. But you can, what's it called? But I know the stream will still be playing. But I have to go at like 5:25 or something.
Okay. So on defense, your goal is to make it so that if they enter this zone, they're getting shot at immediately. So you need a position where as soon as someone crosses that line, shots on them right there. So that's where you want to sit. And you kind of, until this entire area is completely clear and you're seeing it's clear on all sides, you don't want to leave so that you disrupt this perimeter. Once you do have that all under control, that's when you can start moving up to here and then to here and, take slices of the map at a time as you push back out. And each of these slices might have to be something as intense as taking a 2v1 fight or something like launching a special at them. Or if the enemy team isn't there, it's just we're going to paint up a little bit and then move forward as far as we can. And it's only here that we're going to start being contested. But wherever it is that you're going to start being contested, that's when you set up and try to make special plays and force your way in. But on defense, we don't have the luxury of moving up yet because the basket is open. And so letting anybody anywhere near the basket is not an acceptable thing. We need to play a zone defense, like in basketball. We need this zone covered, we need this zone covered, we need this zone covered. And so if those zones are not going to be covered if we push up, then we need to just stay where we are and cover them.
Oh, okay. So the priority besides like staying safe on defense is just to paint?
Painting is a very good tactic. The goal really is that we need to let the basket close first. We need to make sure that that's not available so that they can't just sneak in around us and score. In order to let the basket close, we need to control this zone around the basket because it is within this arc that they are able to throw clams and score, or get behind us into a position where they can score from, that too. So controlling this zone means as soon as anybody moves into this zone, they're getting shot at. And that's the rule that you need to have. So someone comes through here. If they make it all the way around, the question to ask as a team is, why were they not being shot at when they came through here? Did they splat someone and that player was the one who was in charge of defending it and that's why they got around? Were they not called out? Was there someone who wasn't guarding this zone? Was there a person who was over here who was meant to be guarding it but wasn't in a position that let them completely lock this out? was it that the player who's in charge of guarding this zone didn't paint to enforce the zone? Because if this area isn't painted for you, the enemy player gets to just zip around and get through. Whereas if you've painted all of this defensively so that nobody can sneak in, if someone wants to go through here, they're going to have to paint for themselves first, and that paint is going to give them away and make them very obvious to a player who's here whose intent is to defend that. It's also going to give them fewer escape routes when the fight breaks out, and that's going to make it more likely that the defender is going to be able to succeed. So it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on over here. It might be that this left side wasn't painted well enough so that they were able to get in and sneak through. That's usually the place that I find that this falls apart, that you've got players in the right places oftentimes on lower level competitive teams, but because they are only painting what they personally need to move around in, you know, everything that's not painted right here, everything that's not scribbled in, is an area that the opponents have to walk in. So you can't just let the opponents walk in here and have their own ink to swim around in. That's going to let them score more. You can't just let the opponents get up over the block and stand here and swim around and stuff, because that's going to let them score and then back away, which is exactly how they're going to stall the basket. You can't let someone swim around this way and have all of this painted, because that's how they get behind you and cause that, you know, end game situation that you guys ran into. So usually I do find that while paint isn't like the exact theoretical reason that I would say you're losing the basket, I would say you're losing the basket because this part of your zone was not enforced and someone just came through. The way that you enforce the zone and the way that you prevent that from happening is by painting well enough that if someone is going to push in, that's just going to get them splatted and that they can't just do that.
Oh, okay. So, moral of the story is to paint defensively too?
Yes. Once you have, once you're in one of these important positions where you're defending the basket, and you are not under immediate threat from the enemy team, and there's not immediately someone in your weapon's range who is scoring, the next priority is immediately start painting thoroughly to get control of everywhere that they can get to the basket from. That'll make it harder for them to get further in. That'll make it harder for them to attack from any given angle. And even if, you know, something falls apart on one side of the map, if you've painted well enough over here, let's say, and the middle falls through, you have a little bit of time to deal with what happens over here while the enemy team is trying to paint over all of this. But if there are just 3 different routes that they can take to get to your basket at any point in time, as soon as you address one of them, the other ones are going to score. And you're going to keep getting shifted around. And that's how an optimal Clam blitz attack is going to work. They're going to not all attack at the same time, or they're not going to just send one person in with all the clams from one location to throw them all in. They're going to put one person in. That person's going to score 1 or 2, which is going to reset the basket by 6 seconds. And then they're going to back up because they're going to immediately start getting shot at. But then somebody is going to come in from a different angle and throw another 1 or 2, and then they're going to back up. And during that time, this other player who has clams is going to rotate back in and start scoring because now the attention is over here, and you're going to shift the defense back and forth like that. Maybe someone comes up over here and then drops back. And it's this sort of cycle that is going to let them keep the basket open long enough to KO.
Oh, okay, that's really interesting. Because, yeah, I think we did watch your Clam Blitz video and we were thinking about that. Okay, I think I understand. I do have, as you were talking, I did have one question. If we do get specials in defense and we're really having a tough time breaking out, would you recommend using pairing up 2 specials just to break their break their positioning?
2 specials at a time are always a good idea if you've got an engagement that you can actually throw them at. If the enemy team is just going to back up and you're going to waste those 2 specials right here, then that's not worth as much. But if the enemy team is committed and it's time for a fight that you need to win, then definitely coordinate those 2 specials so that they're as impactful as possible and push in with those specials. And that's a really strong way to hard push them out of the basket area.
Oh, okay. And just think, I do have a question about the special usage because I remember watching one of your videos and there was this part where they said not to use them or like it's ideal not to use specials all at this like at least two specials all at the same time or something because then you'll
Not
have
at
to get a
least
second
two.
special or something?
The problem arises if you are using all four at the same time.
Oh, okay.
If you use all four at the same time, then you will not have any other specials for another good 15-20 seconds. But if you use two at the same time, you still have two other players who are charging their specials, and once those come up, maybe the two specials get you this space, and then the next special gets you this space, and then your fourth player gets special by the time you're pushed up, because you're pushing up at this point, because you're gaining momentum, and then the next special can win you this space, and then by the time you're this far forward, those other two are probably pretty close to getting special again, and you're ready to make a push on the basket. Staggering the specials is the goal, but that doesn't mean you can't use two at the same time. And in fact, in that video I just made today about Cherry Limeade's push, they have a particularly difficult defensive position they need to crack on Hagglefish, and so they use both the Tri-Strike and the Killer Whale to clear that area and make sure that that spot is safe for them. In fact, they actually use a third special right after that, which is the big bubbler on the tower. So, but that's, I don't know, that's kind of in sequence. But yeah, stagger your specials, but that doesn't mean don't use two at the same time. It just means don't launch all four at the same time. Because at that point, some of those specials are probably redundant. If you throw a Booyah Bomb here, and then you've got two Tri-Strikes, and they're all getting thrown from, like, back in this area, like, where do you even throw all of those other Tri-Strikes? They're just all going to land in, like, the same spot over here. They're going to cover the same ground at the same time. It's going to be redundant. If you use a Booyah Bomb here, and that forces the enemy team back, maybe you push up, get a pick or something with that, and then launch a Tri-Strike here, that pushes them even further back, and that's kind of the idea.
Oh, okay, I see. Thank you so much. I think I've been taking notes this whole time, so I think I'll stick with the captain and the other teammates, my friends. So yeah, this helped me a lot. Unfortunately, I do have to go. I do have to bounce. But I learned a lot, and I had a lot of fun not only learning but talking to you, Debbie, and Wind, and playing along. So I really had fun, and I really hope that I could come by and say hi when on Metafy. I think that's what it's called. But
Yep.
we're still sorting things out. But yeah, we learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for listening to us criticize your team the whole time, because that does take a little bit of courage. That does take a little bit of humility, so I really appreciate that in all of the people who are willing to do this. You have a good one.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye, Wind. Bye, Jem. Have a great day.
You too.
Have a good one.
What a friendly human being.
Yeah, very friendly.
All right. So we are going to switch over now to Wind's VOD review. Where am I? Here I am. So this is going to be on the replay code system, which I already have downloaded because I'm ahead of things for once. When does that ever happen?
Before we watch the replay, I do have a few questions. One is about Tri-Strike specifically, and the other one is just weapons as a whole.
Okay.
Because in the past, I came up with a dumb idea of playing like 10 matches with each of the weapons to understand them more. It was painful. So I wanted to ask, was there like some kind of a way that pros test the weapons around to come up with an idea on how they work, what they're good at, what's good paint? I specifically want to know what is good paint and what isn't good paint. And just overall, how do y'all come up with how good a weapon is at something? Is essentially what I would like to know.
The process of learning, I mean, it's definitely complex. What's going to happen is early on in the game, you're going to get some people who are theory crafters, whose joy in life derives from puzzle solving and figuring out what's going to be good in this game and coming up with theories, and then they take those theories and they test them in ranked matches. And you know, the strongest players rise to the top fairly quickly in that sort of an environment. And those players are given these strategies, given these ideas from the people who are thinking about them. They test those theories out, and they get to see which ones work and which ones don't. A lot of it is just iterative. A lot of it is, let's try this and see if it works. Okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? And you come up with an idea of all these patterns that occur in the game. And over time, we as a competitive community have collectively gotten a better understanding of the game from learning from each other and from watching each other, even if we're rivals and we're you know, sneaking peeks at each other's tape and stuff like that. So as time has gone on, we've gotten a general idea of how a Splatoon game works and what to watch out for. As far as painting goes, that one's relatively simple. People are going to play a few matches on the weapon and see how much paint that they tend to get. So if you're playing a typical match on something like the Flingza, and you're going out there and you're just like, oh wow, I have 1500 P at the end. I usually have like 1100. That weapon is painting a lot more than my other weapons typically do. Then that's one idea. Another idea is they might just test it out in the training room and see how fast can I get special. So those are a couple of easy ideas, but typically people just kind of arrive at those ideas from playing it through their experience with the weapon, from realizing, oh wow, yeah, this does paint pretty well. It's the amount of paint that you put down, and also the value of the paint you put down. If the paint has a lot of gaps in it, then that's less useful paint because it's less easy to swim through. And if it's very smooth and very fast, then that's higher value paint. It's also very high value paint if you're able to put down enough of it to start swimming very quickly. So for example, a short range shooter's ability to fire one pellet at their feet and move through that instantly is very, very powerful compared to, say, a big swig roller, which can put out a lot of paint with one flick, but it's not immediately going to be able to swim through that, and it's a very slow fire rate, so once they're committed to that, they might get shot by something. So those are some other things to think about. The Reflux is definitely, I think, the best painting weapon in the game, in terms of just how the main weapon paints and how quickly it puts it down and how swimmable it is. But there are definitely some advantages to other weapons as well in terms of how well they paint and what other utility they provide. So hopefully that answered that for you.
That clears things a lot more. That should help in the future for like coming up with comps and shit.
All right.
And
Go ahead.
the second question is, does Tri-Strike have the same feature that Booyah Bomb has where you can paint despite it being active, or no?
You can paint through it. You can't throw bombs in it. I believe I'm correct about that.
Okay, so it's basically Booyah Bomb but more narrow, essentially.
Yeah, you could think about it that way, because it does also start in the middle and expand outward like the Booyah Bomb does.
Yeah.
It also has unlimited height, or at least very not limited height. It's the Booyah Bomb being a sphere specifically causes it to have some quirks. For example, like, there are certain level geometry where you don't want to throw it, like on top of platforms especially, because that will actually significantly decrease its radius. But the Tri-Strike is a cylinder. It's just going to hit in the same distance around it on all sides all the way down.
Yeah, it's gonna be a straight line. It doesn't care about the geometry.
Yep.
Because like I know in like Undertow, like it just completely passes through the glass, so again, that clears those questions out.
All right. So we'll get started here. Oh, whoops. I am not streaming my view. Let me fix that for you so that you can see with no delay. All right, there it is. So you should be seeing the match now, so let me know when you've got that pulled up on Discord.
Yeah, I got it.
Awesome.
I can see the burgers in front.
The burgers, yeah. All right, awesome. Shout outs to HelloFresh. Thanks for sponsoring me. This is not a sponsored stream, so I don't have the capitalism alarm on it or anything like that. But I do have a code, so if you've been interested in trying out a meal subscription service, try it out with my code, and then that will save you money because it's a discount. It will make me money because they'll pay me, and also the capitalism will be happy. So everybody's happy, me, you, and capitalism. All right. So Mahi Mahi Rainmaker. We've got you as the longest range weapon in the entire game, actually. 3 short-ranged weapons, which are all pretty good choices, actually. This is not a bad team comp. Obviously, right now, if this were top-level meta, you'd want to see a crab tank, but this is very workable. You've got the Zap, which is going to be able to put down Tacticoolers, which will make the pushes faster. Then you're going to have a lot of pressure between the torpedoes from the Junior and your charge slashes and burst bombs. And then you've got a T-Tech who can actually go in there and really push things, and the Zap that can kind of follow them in, and you that can kind of follow them in by diving with Zipcaster or something. So there's a lot of versatility here, and the lack of range isn't going to hurt you because the longest range weapon they've got is a sloshing machine. So you outrange that, and you can kite everything that you see in this game. That's a really valuable thing for you to know. As soon as you see an enemy player, you can just back up, and they will not be able to hit you.
So I don't need to approach them at all. I just need to kite them.
Yep. That was an interesting way you rolled out. I think it's probably slower than going out through the middle. And the reason that I point that out is that if your team decides to go for pop and they don't get it because you went to the pop slower than they did, that is something that can be dangerous, especially in a solo queue environment where you're not able to communicate to them that you're not going that way and that they need to be careful about the getting popped themselves. Now, they end up getting the pop anyway without any help from you, which means that the enemy team was too slow, frankly, because they should be winning this pop. They have a Dapple Doolies. Like,
I don't even see any ink around.
Yeah, they probably just went too slow, because Dapple Doolies are one of the highest DPS weapons in the entire game. If you see a Dapple Doolies on the enemy Rainmaker comp, and you don't have, like, a Bloblobber and a Double Bomb Junior or something like that, you're just giving up the pop, because those things shred the Rainmaker like crazy. So the fact that they weren't able to make use of those Dapples on the shield here and actually lose someone to the pop, I think that's a big error on the other team's part. So this is good, this is good. You do not have to get in there. You can just sit here and launch attacks at them, and they are the ones who have to back up. And you can kind of just keep doing that. No need to put yourself in any danger. There might be someone sharking around the side of this Rainmaker pedestal. You don't need to be there. You can just keep putting attacks around the sides and let your teammates push up and collapse on them when they're trapped and kind of pinned down behind it because of the shots you're putting out. If you go too close, that's when you're going to take damage, and that's when you're going to go down. And that actually is what happens here. I wanted to see you just keeping your distance from that pedestal and putting shots around either side of it to flush them out for your teammates to go in and deal with. Because once you went in on your own, that's when they were in range, and that gave them an advantage they didn't need to have over you. So it ends up being a 3-for-3 trade. We jump right in. What was your teammate doing on top of that? Excuse me? That's a strange position to be in on Mahi, but I like that you are threatening that. I want you to be a little bit more careful about the Booyah Bomb. You barely make it out of here in time, and I think if you had been on a different cycle with your swings, it might have caught you here. Probably one slash fewer. Once you see it's charged, you got to start booking it out of there. And again, yeah, you can just keep kiting them like this. I don't like your Rainmaker pushing up like that. Yeah, they didn't have anybody in front of them, and they didn't have any paint in front of them, so they were just kind of stuck. And without anybody creating a defensive perimeter in front of them, they weren't going to be able to survive very long. As a general rule, as the Rainmaker carrier, the first enemy player that you actually run into is going to stop you. So the only way you get to push the Rainmaker is if you have somebody as a buffer in between you and that player to shield you from them so that you can take that fight together, beat that player, and then move forward from there. So this is not your fault at all. You did as much as you possibly could to get here and defend the Rainmaker, but the Rainmaker just pushed too far up too quickly, and so now you're going to lose it there, and we're down a player. I I think that you probably should have noticed the Octobrush a little bit sooner. They were marked. The Rainmaker shield here is kind of a little piece of cover for you now that it's here. Like, it's going to block the enemy players from just trying to rush at you from in front. So the only danger to you right now is this player who's over here on the right in the middle. And your teammate is clearly engaging on them, as you can see, and they walk right through your sightline. So I think if you attack this player here instead of just going for shield, you can probably help your teammate out on the right and protect them, so that instead of this being a one-for-one trade, it ends up being a clean fight win for you guys. And this is your competitive team, right? Because I'm seeing the same prefixes at the beginning of your names.
Yeah, there was one of the subs. This is why one of them doesn't have like the same ass fucking symbol in front of the name.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, we don't like have as much practice as I would like us to do, because I'm the only one in the main team members that's 18 years old. The others are like 13. So
they have school. Gotcha.
Yeah. But this is why, like, one of the reasons why I tried to, I wanted to get a coaching session to begin with, so that I could have pointers to become better mechanically, so I could then, like, help them out in return.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think in that situation there, obviously you have to worry a little bit about the Rainmaker shield getting popped. Like, you don't want to let that happen to you, but you had a chance to at least shoot, like, once over to the right to hit the Octobrush, and I think if you do that, your teammate in mid probably doesn't trade. They probably just get it clean, and now you would have a 3v3 numbers situation rather than a 2v3. Also, that jump is really unsafe. With fighting happening that close, especially with being that close to the Rainmaker shield, like, let's look at what the map would have looked like for them. Rainmaker goes down, and it is... when did we jump? Yeah, we jump after multiple players have been splatted in that area, and the Rainmaker pops for the enemy team. So there's a lot of blue ink going down there. There's a lot of fighting that's been happening there. Enemy ink and fights are two things that you need to avoid when you're trying to super jump in. So
Yeah,
this one's definitely not an especially safe one to make.
like one of the things I definitely think I need to improve on is like super jumping a bit more, because when I get splatted and look at the map, I look for like the safest possible option. If I don't see one in the moment, I just decide to just swim over to the center instead.
Yeah, I mean, better to err on the side of caution, but it's also useful to like watch top players and see where they're jumping in, so that you can get a sense of like what more is possible than what I'm currently doing. How much further can I push this before I'm going to get punished for it?
Yeah.
So that is definitely useful to think about. So there's this trade that happens here, and then I would be concerned, especially, like, I keep going back to this, but you are the longest ranged weapon in the game, and so if there's anything that can get in range of you, you want to be keeping that opportunity cut off from them as soon as possible. There's a bunch of blue ink here in mid. I don't feel comfortable sitting next to that, especially with a player across from me. I want to back up and put paint through the most likely places that they're going to be traversing that, so that that cuts off their option to get close to me.
Or probably threw a burst bomb there or something.
Yeah, because like they don't go after you right away, but as soon as they start wanting to approach you, look at how easily they were able to swim around that block and get right on top of you here.
Yeah.
That's actually a flank from the sloshing machine, which is pretty ballsy of them, as the last weapon on their comp that should be doing that. Yeah, there's no way you stop the Rainmaker dunking here. It's just like a 1v3. So from here, I would back up a little bit, try and create some space, maybe give teammates paint, but I'm worried that this push back in is a little too early. It's very... One of the things I don't really like about this map is that this area right here, if you're trying to push back in from defense, you have to push up high ground to get control of this. You can be like rolling out from your spawn and actually be at a disadvantage because you had to cross this low ground before you got to the plat. So swimming up over the top of this ledge here is a really dangerous thing to do, and your frontliners are probably being a little overeager to do it. If they go over the top in a way that they can be seen, that gives the enemy team information about them before they have information on the enemy team. I would at least, if you're going to try and consider going up over the top, sit on the wall for a second and look over to see if you can collect information on someone before you go over the top. Because otherwise, you may just pop up and be like, all right, where is everybody? Oh, I'm shot. Because they already had their aim trained on you from seeing you coming a mile away.
One of the habits I have noticed that I have is that instead of being indecisive, I'm too decisive without having gathered enough information beforehand, which often gets me splatted and just me acting way too aggressive than I should have probably been.
Yeah, that's a good thing to know about yourself. I will say, so far, for the most part, I think you've been pretty measured and pretty careful. The biggest thing that's getting you splatted is you allowing there to be enemy ink near you. So this area on the right here, if this 52 gal decides that they want you dead, there is a Rainmaker shield in between them and the rest of your teammates, and they have all of the ink that they could want to swim close enough to you to do that. So the first thing that I would do here is put out a charge slash in their direction that cuts off as much of this ink as possible, as much of this path that they can use as possible, so that if they do start making a move toward you, they have to take a less efficient route and you have more time to back up. You're also standing with your back to a wall right now, so if someone were to push you, you would literally be unable to back up because you just bump into that. So that's another thing to be concerned about. You want more open sight lines and you want escape routes, as many of them as you can find, especially ones that don't involve your feet needing to be painted, like the one where you jump around to the right-hand side here. The only way you make it up that ledge with the jump is if your feet are painted. If they're not, you're just going to fall into the water or not make it the rest of the way. So the only way that you have out is left, and that's a relatively easy way for them to cut off if you start getting collapsed on here.
Because I haven't noticed the blue ink on the left.
That slash right there is really good, because that makes it so that if they're on the ramp and they're trying to get further to the left to use this paint, they can't use it. That's the sort of thing that I wanted to see earlier on the right side against the 52. Now, with the paint having been here this long, there is always the concern that someone has already made it to the left and they're already sharking there. But at this point, if they were there, they would have splatted you already. So, they're not there. Okay, good. We get rid of the torpedo. I would always try to get to an angle where you have an off angle on the enemy team, where you're not hitting from the same direction as your teammates are. Let me pull up, and I'm gonna switch screens really quickly. Actually, wait, no, I don't need to switch screens on your end. I just need to switch screens on OBS. So I can do this. Haha. Okay. So from here, the enemy players are right here, and you've got teammates that are right here. If you stand right here, your teammates are controlling this zone, and you're maybe controlling like this zone. So that's covering the same spot that your teammates are, and if the opponents were to like run for cover behind this, they'd be perfectly safe. If instead of being here, you moved to here, and I'm not sure if the range actually works out, you might need to be a little further forward than this, but you might be able to hit around this cover over here while your teammates hit around it from this direction, and now this player's trapped. You want to avoid situations where the enemy team only has to look in one direction and can see your entire team in that direction, can see everything that they possibly could worry about right here. Because now all they need to do is throw a single bomb on this spot and no one can move forward. All they need to do is put a single special right here and all of you are displaced. They can also put someone across on the right-hand side and try to flank, and now everyone is kind of bunched up and it's just a shooting gallery. But if you're spread out a little bit more, now if this player is coming around, first of all, you're just going to see them before they get there, and you're going to be calling that out and backing up and getting in their way and stopping them from doing this. But also, even if the entire opposing team stacks up in one place, that starts to give you opportunities for flanks or pincer movements, better fights that you can take than if you're all standing on top of each other. And also, you're not going to shot block each other. If you've got like a Hydra player who's standing here and you stand here, the Hydra player has gone from being able to hit all the way out to here to being able to hit your back. And that's it.
That happened to me a lot when I was playing backline weapons, to the point where I literally called out the friends I was playing with, please do not stand in front of me.
Yep. That's it.
What I should have probably done is either do a charge slash or throw a burst bomb to the left there. That way the blue ink isn't easily accessible to them. So they'd have to paint over the orange ink to even be able to get to the platform in the first place.
For sure. Okay, I think I've got it all set up on the back end here so we can keep going. All right. So the Rainmaker has reset, but our team is down a player. We also have a couple of specials, so we really don't want to be getting into fights right now so that we can keep ourselves alive and have these specials ready to use. I would say, as you're retreating here, it's not a bad idea necessarily to retreat. I would say you want to see if you need to retreat, and only in that case should you retreat. But definitely, it looks like somebody's shooting from there. Okay, yeah, they're up on the platform on the left. As you're retreating, you turn your back to everything. And you want to do that for as little time as possible. Like, maybe if you have to, like, paint your feet or something. But for the full time that you're, charging a charge slash, you have your back to the enemy team. If they were to rush you, you wouldn't know. And you're also not even necessarily looking at where the enemy player is likely to be. They're in front of you right now. That's where that shot came from. They can't possibly come from your spawn, so there's no reason to look at your spawn. Look at where the threat is coming from. And always keep that in your sights so that your reticle is as close as possible to hitting them, and your aiming task is easier when the fight comes up. And that way you're also keeping tabs on their positioning. But like, moving in right here, your camera is still not turned in the direction of that player who's threatening you. We want to make sure that we've got that all covered. And there, as we're moving around, we're still not turning our camera to look at the middle of the map here, which is where they must have retreated to. That's where they have to be. If we just turn our backs to them now, they could just make that exact same flank and we wouldn't see it coming. We do end up being able to drop on it, but we haven't been keeping tabs on them long enough to have our aim on, so while we paint their feet, we're not able to hit the shots, and so we get caught out there. So at this point, one thing, it's one thing if the enemy team is likely to be in an area, then you really want to be painting defensively. But right here, your teammates are in mid. If there are opponents who are going to be pushing forward, they're going to attack your teammates before they attack you. So at this point, seeing where the fight is actually taking place, it would be better to move a little bit further forward. Still make sure you have escape routes and everything, but if a fight is happening and you're not having an impact on it, your team is at a numbers disadvantage, effectively. That's 2 down. So we actually might be able to get forward. We're getting a little bit overzealous there. This would have been a good time before that player went down to be zip casting into the enemy team, because that will give them something to look at other than the Rainmaker push, and it'll give your other frontliner on the left-hand side something to push in with. Because, again, we want to create this situation where we're attacking them from 2 different sides. And if we're trying to push up, that is the eraser. If we're trying to push up in this direction, and they only have to look this way, the Rainmaker will never get anywhere. But if we're trying to push up here and then you zipcast in over here and you're behind them, now they have to turn over to the side. Your other frontliner can come in and get behind them, and we've actually got a much better fight that way that might let the Rainmaker get through. So we need to do something here to be able to let this Rainmaker push happen. But we end up just kind of sitting back in mid in a position that's so safe that we're not going to be able to hit anyone, and our teammates are basically at a disadvantage, even though you were there and could have helped. A little bit, yeah. I think I noticed, like, oh no, he's gonna get too close and run off the ledge, isn't he? You didn't have time to catch up to the Rainmaker if it backed up, and I knew that if you tried to pursue it far enough that you would have just fallen off, so... We do know that there's a player on the right. Knowing that there's a player on the right, we really want to be looking over to the right now, because that player is going to back up and come back to us. They're going to come through mid at us. We're going to get flanked. And there they are. So our team got really split up there. Our frontliners went up too far, and part of that was probably that they were following you up there and didn't back up at the same time you did. Part of it is that the Rainmaker never gets picked up, so it's important on a coordinated team to always have a conversation about who the Rainmaker carriers are going to be and who, like, the substitute Rainmaker carrier is going to be if that player is unavailable, like if they have a special or if they're down. And then the frontliners are able to push forward knowing that somebody is going to have the Rainmaker picked up and are going to be able to push with the objective, and they're not going to have to back up and worry about that. Because as the frontliners push up, if the Rainmaker had picked up and gone behind them, you might have been able to get away with this as long as someone paid attention to the middle. But nobody picks up. The frontliners push forward. There's a gap now between your team. The enemy team just exploits the isolated players here and takes them out, and we didn't gain anything for having the advantage that let us pick the Rainmaker up. So now we're being aggressed from two different sides, one from mid and one from in front, and that's how that's going to go pretty much every time. They have two angles on you, you only have one angle on them, they're at an advantage. So the important takeaways there were: realize that there's a player in middle you're going to have to zone out away from the Rainmaker, get someone to pick the Rainmaker up faster, and push up together instead of going up one at a time. Tunnel a little bit on going after the torpedo, and that commits you to the point where you get stuck in the bomb. It's really important with slower fire rate weapons to make sure that you are making every single shot count and that it's only being used for a very particular reason and that it's safe to use. A shooter can get away with a few extra shots here and there because they're just so fast, but when you're committing a whole, like, 30 or 40 frames to swinging the weapon, it's really important to recognize the defensive vulnerability that you're at. There, you had that fight, I think, and you actually closed the distance. If you had backed up there, you probably would have been fine. Like, you hit them with the burst bomb, but then you dash forward, or you jump forward. If you just back up here, you still have the range to hit them as far around and at the same angles as you were going to be able to hit them anyway. But because you rush forward towards the dapple doolies, they're able to just keep firing the weapon. The longer ranged weapon should be backing up and kiting the shorter ranged weapon. And the shorter ranged weapon is the one that should be closing the distance. So, meantime, someone snuck the Rainmaker and got checkpoint, which is nice, I guess. But we only have a minute left, and we still aren't going to have lead off of that pop. So we need to get another push going, and that means we need to regroup and make sure we have specials and get control of the middle of the map. So I think it's a good idea to get a little bit of paint on the left-hand side here to make sure no one can approach, but there happens to be someone on your plat already. And that is not a player that you should probably be ignoring. We'll go back over to the map here. if there is a player back here and we decide to push here while there's an opponent here, we're sandwiched. They have our backs, whichever way we're looking. This is one of the worst possible positions we can be in. It doesn't happen often in Splatoon because the maps tend to be kind of narrow, so you're very unlikely to get a full flank off like this. But this can happen if this player is in your zone, and rather than getting them out of your zone and moving your way forward and taking control of the map like this, you decide to disrespect their zone and go past them. Because they control this area, and if you don't push them out, then you pushing through here, you're liable to get shot, or even if they don't shoot you right away, to get flanked in the back as you push from the front. So it might be that we just didn't notice that that player was there. That's definitely a possibility. But we do see them in a couple of key moments while we're swimming out here. So this is this fight, and then after this is when it happens. So for one thing, if we're checking the map while we're respawning, we're already going to know that there's somebody there. And we do actually swing at them. But we swing at them and then we turn our attention to something else, and they just get to, like, attack us from there. And again, we run away from it. The Reef Slider is one of the most vulnerable specials in the game once it ends. If you're just sitting there waiting to attack them as soon as the Reef Slider ends, you can probably do some damage and potentially get them out of there. But since we push forward, we sacrifice that advantage we have over them. It feels like we're trying a little bit too hard to make a push on the Rainmaker right now. You could be zip casting to close the distance between them if you want to here. But it's not a bad idea to save it so that you can use it for the push instead. Fizzy Bomb, yeah, okay. So once we get them down, I think we want to back up a little bit more from the Rainmaker shield. As a weapon that has enough range to hit the shield while not being hit by the explosion, you can just kind of back up while you're trying to pop it and not really have any consequence for that. I guess maybe you're trying to melee hit it, and then, yeah, I think that's what happens. So you dash in by mistake, and it bumps you into the shield, so that does a little bit of damage, and then the Fizzy Bomb finishes you off, is what happens. This is also a position where it's really vulnerable because there's so much high ground around you. And what they could have done with a Lethal Bomb is just drop that Lethal Bomb on the back side of the Rainmaker, like thrown it up into the air so that it lofts over and lands on your side of the Rainmaker shield, and then it would just pop and explode instantly and splat you. That's exactly what they do, but with a Fizzy Bomb, but it would have worked even if you hadn't been damaged and they'd used like a Splat Bomb. Yeah. So we're 2 down here. It's really important here that we regroup. We cannot just keep going in one at a time and dying. We're not going to get a strong push that way. We've got to go in together. Them picking up is kind of throwing. If they go down after 2 seconds pass, then you get an overtime for sure. And if they're going to try and do the backup strat, yeah, they're backing it up into their base. So this is a perfect time to Zipcaster, actually. There we go. So right now, guaranteed overtime, because they went down in the last 15 seconds. They could have just left it there. They could have left it in the bubble. They could have made it impossible for you guys to even pop it. But they basically gifted it back to you, and now all you have to do is clear first checkpoint. Unfortunately, the Rainmaker is pushing up right on top of its frontliners, and that is not something that works. They need the frontliners to clear the space out in front of them and then move into it. If they're right on top of the frontliners aren't buffering them. They aren't protecting them from the enemy team as the enemy team pushes in. They have no time to react. They have no time to get a shot ready to fire at that player that rushes them. They easily could have sat back far enough and just charged a shot as you got pushed by the Dapple Doolies that they could put a shot on the Dapple Doolies as they were splatting you, get that player down, and then push forward. But because they were right on top of you, they just went down at exactly the same time that you did. So that was a very winnable game, honestly, especially with the position that the enemy team put you in. And it was just the objective play was a little bit too anxious at the end and stood on top of someone who was already threatened, ended up going down with them.
Yeah. The obviously, like in the moment, did not realize that some of the decisions I made were very like rash. Obviously, like rushing for that melee Rainmaker pop was a very bad decision. Especially since, as you mentioned, I could have easily just outranged the explosion and stayed alive to keep them back as much as I could.
I can see why you would go for it because it does pop the Rainmaker faster, and there
Yeah.
are situations where that's the right play. There were two problems with it. One was that you accidentally input the dash, and so you bumped into it instead of just using it from melee range and standing still. The other issue was that you were underneath high ground that the enemy team had control of while you were trying to pop it. And so that made it so that it wasn't going to be safe to stay there. But overall, I wouldn't say that your main problem is being rash. I think that one thing was that in this game, you didn't recognize quite as well that you could basically be playing an anchor role here, that you could just outrange everything and kite everything and never really get touched, and be able to apply a lot of pressure from the backline like that. You have to play a little bit more aggressively against enemy backliners, but here, not so much. Like here, you can actually just play super safe, and that's a pretty good way to play it. So it worked well for you, I would say.
So I didn't need to play Slayer whatsoever there. I could have easily just played Anchor.
Yeah, you're going to end up slaying by just being out of range of them and them having to get closer to you than you have to get to them.
There's another thing I have noticed with how I play Stamper specifically is that I tend to overly rely on jumping with charge slashes instead of just standing still. It's something I've noticed that other Stamper players do, like Charo, where sometimes he's not even jumping around. He's just standing and doing horizontal slashes. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something I need to work on.
Jumping is a big risk in this game because the main reason is splat bombs, honestly. Whenever you jump, it's going to take you a little while before you touch the ground again. And during that time, there are some things that can, threaten lethal damage fast enough that if you don't get out of the way by dropping into the ink and swimming right away, you actually just get splatted. So a lot of the jump slashes that you're probably seeing are Chara is seeing a T-Tech and realizing that if he jumps, there's just going to be a bomb at his feet as soon as he lands, and so he needs to not do that. And also, if the, say, charge slash were to land and get a splat, if he's charging up another one, he can just fire it right away and then immediately drop into the ink and start swimming, rather than having to land from the jump, and that saves him a little bit of time on that as well.
Mm. The VAR review definitely helped me realize that sometimes the Stamper's not just exclusively Slayer, especially with how the range on this thing is. Like, holy shit, it's got so much range. Why? So
Longer than Bamboozler.
Longer than Bamboo, Jesus.
Yeah, it is actually longer range than the short range chargers with the charge
Holy
slash.
shit. So the only thing that outranges it is E-liter, really.
Well, I mean, they're the chargers, like the splat charger and the splatter scope. Those ones will outrange it, but the Squiffer, the Bamboo, and the Gootuber are all shorter range than a charge slash from the Splatana Stamper.
Probably see if Stamper can outrange Tri-Stringer. That could probably help me out when I play the weapon.
Yeah, Tri-Stringer full charge shots are like splatter scope range or something. Like, they're hard backline, so they will outrange it as well. But the less charged shots, you might be able to outrange. It depends on how they throw them, I guess.
Well, to begin with, if a Slayer is going after you as a tri-stringer, you want to use the spam shots as much as possible, anyways, because it denies them a path to go to. So
Yeah, I think you want like the single charged arrows most of the time in
Yeah.
combat situation. Like you don't want the tap shots per se unless they're right on top of you. You generally want to be hitting them with both the arrows and the explosions.
that's why I'm hoping its second kit has a bomb. It would help it so much. The
Might be
But
more
it
than it
wouldn't-
needs. I'm worried about that. Its shots are already bombs.
like,
Like imagine you fire a shot, you throw a bomb, and then the arrows and the bomb explode at the same time.
if they give this thing a burst bomb, it's over.
Oh yeah, jumping is also really dangerous against chargers. Absolute Insanity makes a good
Oh
point
yeah,
there.
no, definitely. I keep falling for that. But to
Because
begin with,
you,
I
you poke
struggle
up
with
you poke up from around cover a lot more that way, and you also while you are moving, chargers are gonna get good at spotting the trajectory of a player who's in the air and coming down, because you can't steer in the air. This isn't like Jigglypuff in a Smash game. You can't just like be in the air and fall this way, fall sideways. You're going to go in a very predictable fashion straight to the ground, and so they're going to be able to spot that out and hit you on the way down.
Yeah, no, definitely. You ain't a balloon, you're a squid.
Exactly.
You got gravity. That thing does not have gravity.
Yeah. Puff is a silly character.
It will always baffle me that the Hungrybucks has been able to push this character to its limit, but I can't expect less from a competitive player, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting player for sure. But do you have any questions pertinent to Squid Game that you would like to ask?
Well, I want to know if there's like any other bad habits that you noticed from the VOD that we just reviewed.
The big one is the objective play. I'll give you a quick rundown, but I do have a guide on Rainmaker on YouTube that I would recommend y'all watch. So let's say Rainmaker Carrier is here, and you're pushing in this direction, right? This is your spawn, so this is where you're trying to score. From this position, if you do not have friendly players here and the opponents push you, you need to back up. The only way that the Rainmaker is ever going to be safe is if they have a friendly teammate in front of them, making it so that as soon as an opponent gets in range to be able to shoot the Rainmaker, they are being shot before they get there, and they're being stopped. Because unless that sort of zone is being enforced around the Rainmaker is going to lose that fight. It is too slow of a weapon, it fires too slowly, it has too slow of a fire rate, and also, I kind of said that already, and also it doesn't have any subs or specials to protect itself with. Just lots and lots of problems with that weapon. As soon as you pick up the Rainmaker, you're at a disadvantage for having picked it up. So you need to create advantages first. Don't pick it up until you have an advantage. Then get someone up in between you and the enemy team. There needs to be a player in between any threat to the Rainmaker and the Rainmaker at all times if you expect this push to ever keep going. And the Rainmaker only should advance up until the point that either it's safe to advance, or if it's close to the end of the game and they need lead or something, then maybe you make a play for extra points or for a checkpoint that's pretty close by or something like that. But if you're not getting lead or you're not getting a checkpoint, it's probably not worth it to push the Rainmaker knowing you're going to be splatted. It's probably worth it to stay patient and try and keep the push alive as much as you can. The only other time I would say is if like you're the Rainmaker carrier and all of your teammates have gotten splatted around you, well, just push it a little further because that's the best you're going to do because you're going to go down anyway. But there were a lot of pushes in this game where like player here, Rainmaker carrier here, and the enemy team just got straight at them, splatted them before they could move anywhere, and your push was already over.
Yeah.
The goal is frontliners up here first, Rainmaker stays back, and then once this area is under control, then the Rainmaker pushes up. But in the meantime, the Rainmaker is bombarding this area to make it easier for the frontliners to clear this out, rather than just trying to swim forward. Because you want to make it so that, well, you might not be the most useful weapon on the map, but at least you're doing something to help the cause as the frontliners push up and try to create space for you.
That is one thing I'm gonna have to try my best to break my teammates out of, because I like I like to believe I know a bit more about when's a good time to push with the Rainmaker, considering I have a bunch of experience playing Tri-Stringer on Rainmaker. At some point I went into Anarchy with friends that I'm not in a team with, just a bunch of friends I wanted to play with, and we went on a massive win streak where I was the one carrying the Rainmaker as the backliner. It was to be expected. That's something I'm probably gonna have to try and talk to about with my teammates to let them know when's a good time. Because a lot of the time I'm trying to play passively, just keep them backed away and hopefully get some picks so that we have numbers advantage before we push. But they just end up picking the Rainmaker and going in anyways.
Callouts will help with that. If you, no matter how, jumpy someone gets, if they pick up the Rainmaker and right as they do, you call, wait for me to get in front of you, wait for me to get in front of you, hold back, back up. Stay safe. Like, that sort of thing, over time, they're going to recognize, oh, I need to be doing that. And that's going to hold them back in all likelihood. If it's not holding them back and they're still running forward like deer in the headlights, then that's something to talk about in a team conversation. Be like, hey, this is the plan, okay? We need to not do this. After a certain amount of reinforcement, they will eventually get it.
Yeah. There's one last question I have at the moment. There might be other questions that will pop up, but for now, might be the last one. Is there such a thing as being too patient to make
Absolutely. If you have an advantage, like if you're in like a 4v2 or a 3v1 or better, and you're not immediately picking up the Rainmaker and moving it, you're losing potential points you could be scoring. That sort of hesitation is something that costs a lot of teams games in Rainmaker. Rainmaker is fast. Rainmaker is a mode where when you get an advantage, you have like 6 seconds to push that advantage until the entire enemy team is back up. And so you've got to take advantage of all 6 of those seconds.
You gotta go. They're down, you gotta go.
Right. So you need to recognize when you don't have an advantage. You need to recognize when, say, there's a player you haven't cleared from a position that threatens you. You need to play defense, but you also need to be aware of those things, not just to keep yourself safe, but so that when you do have the advantage, you are immediately pressing it and you're getting the best possible push that you can out of the limited time that they're going to give you.
Yeah, I figured being too patient wasn't a good thing either. On the times I'll go into solo queue in pretty much any game mode, I'll try to figure out the key pointers to, okay, this is a good advantage, make a push, and pointers for this is not a good advantage, fall back.
Yep. And the key point there is when you have advantage. And advantages differ. It could be that you have a numbers advantage, but it's also an advantage if the enemy team is just completely out of play. Like, let's say the enemy team is pushing this area right here, but you have the Rainmaker and you're going this way. Yeah, you may not have as much of a numbers advantage, but like they're completely out of play. You can just run it at this point and score points. Are they likely to give you that sort of thing at your level? No, but if it happens, you've got to be able to recognize that. If, for example, you have specials you may have a 3v4 situation, but if 3 of you have specials, you might still be able to take that fight. Or if they're just in a really good position. Like I showed a clip on my video today about Cherry Limeade where they win a 3v4 engagement because of a smart use of specials.
No, that was really cool to see.
So those kinds of situations, like if you've got a plan, if you have a way that you're like, I'm pretty confident we can keep this safe, then numbers advantage isn't the end all be all. It's just those situations are the exception to the rule. Numbers advantage is usually what you're looking for.
Yeah. That's usually what guarantees you to be in a safer position.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked what rank this is. I assume this is either a Scrim or Anarchy Open, because this is a competitive team that's playing together.
This was on S Plus before having so many losses to the point where I just decided
your rank, your
S.
individual rank isn't all that matters here because you're playing with 3 other teammates and whatever ranks they're at. So, Anarchy Open is, the matchmaking is a lot more loose. So,
it's not that great.
It's gonna put you up against a wide variety of different players. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate. I didn't realize we were gonna have 2 team VOD reviews today. That's why it's taken a long time to get through these today, just because there's a lot to talk about with a full team, which makes it a lot of fun because there are aspects of the game in terms of coordination that we can talk about that we can't talk about in like a solo queue VOD review. So I love having these on stream. And if anybody else has a team they would like to bring on, the way that you get on this show is by DMing me on Discord. Here is the Discord server for Squid School. If you just find me there, unfortunately it's not linked in YouTube right now. The link didn't send, so I'm going to send it manually here. So just find me there and DM me. There will be a little bit of a wait. We're out until March at this point for the next available Tuesday. But I also, if you are interested in getting some help sooner that can or maybe can not be streamed, I also have a Medify account. And once again, I'm going to have to share this link to YouTube as well. Medify is a website where you can hire me as a coach. And that way there will be a fee for it. It's not a huge fee, but there is a fee for that. But then you will get access to me within like 2 or 3 days or something of when you reserve it, potentially, depending on my schedule and everything. So those are usually pretty quick because I am always willing to make time for those because I'm making money. So there's that, and plenty of other links there for you to consider clicking on. Like I've got a Patreon account, I've got a Twitter, a TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, like you're watching right now. There's probably 1 or 2 that I've forgotten, but you can see them. It's fine. It's fine. People know how to click things. So thank you, everybody, for watching. That is going to do it for us for today. I am going to send us over to... let's see here. Let's go and raid Barry on Twitch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link the Twitch channel on YouTube for those of you who want to follow us over there. Barry is one of the biggest Splatoon streamers. He plays for a team called Element R. He's a very experienced backline player, a charger player, and is very beloved within the community. If you've heard of Milana, Milana and Barry are best friends and have been teammates for a very long time. So let's go and say hi to Barry. Here is that link. And we're starting the raid on Twitch. Remember, our raid message is "School's out." So let's say hi to Barry, everybody.